So why should we keep internet decentralized? Or why should you keep internet decentralized? So first, when we say internet, as an introduction, I would just like to say that depends on who you are. Internet is something that has many aspects. So I will address the network, the infrastructure, and the service as a global internet, as we used to say, because when I asked my mother what is internet, she said, "Oh, internet is Facebook." So depending on who you are, okay. So here I will address everything. Back to a little bit history. In the early beginnings, internet was designed by U.S. Army to prevent a nuclear strike on command center, and they decided to have this interconnection between command center, and that was a little bit what internet looked like in the 70s. So interconnected, probably university and military bases. So I try to picture a little bit how it evolves, and mostly from the user perspective. So I see four phases here, 4 ages. The computer age, the beginning of internet. Everybody had computers, and the internet was mostly accessible by some people with modems. And we were not doing anything except sending email or maybe talking with some people very far away. And then the web arrived with Tim Berners-Lee in the late 80s. And we saw the first website and later the social media such as Facebook, etc. And then came the mobile age, the internet for everybody in his pockets all around the world. So it changed the perspective. Everybody was able to have internet access with computer in your pocket and cloud computing. And recently, the AI age, where now you can interact with the agent, able to discuss, and maybe we will see in the future what we could be able to do. So internet is not anymore a place for some researcher where everything was free and you could have access to resources, and it was more like maybe hippie view of the freedom of interconnected information. Nowadays, lots of companies have or business running on internet. The government asks you to declare your taxes on the internet. Your bank is on internet. Your social security stuff are on internet. And of course, it is a real good prey for cyber criminals that try to access all those data, access to bank, etc. So as you can see, in the last years, the ransomware attack has just spiked a lot, and there was all this security issue in the infrastructure. For example, there is an example with the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack in 21, where we had this infrastructure attacked by a ransomware group. And by the way, the ransom has been paid. It was something like $4 million US. So because of that, government tried to protect us from attacks, etc. And we realized with the Snowden leaks in 2013 that there was mass surveillance, which was probably for the good of everybody, for prevent terrorist attacks, maybe, but we can imagine what it could do, and lots of people imagine what could be the abuse of such a system. And in fact, there was some example of abuse in some governments. So a few examples here, the Egyptian, the Myanmar, or Cuba lockdown, and recently the Russians, so Putin, as Jan said, wanted to have the Russia out of the internet, so they unplug the Russian net from the internet to do some tests. So it could be legit. I mean, as a government, you have to protect your people, your citizens from attacks, and you have to be aware of that. But what are the risks? It could be much more than just prevent. What is the limit? Just as always, and also. If the government prevents you to access to the information, what could be the risk for democracy? Because democracy relies on real information. So here we have a risk here. On the infrastructure side, everybody knows that now the infrastructure, cloud computing, is controlled by is mostly 3 main actors. So it's Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. They are trusting more than 60% of the market. And as you can see, it's just the trend. They continue to dominate the market, and the other providers are just fading away. It's more evident when you consider the European cloud market. You can see that the European cloud providers are just declining. So there is maybe in the future there will be only 3 main providers, 3 US main providers. So if you run your infrastructure here as a company, and if you depend on Amazon, and what happens if, for example, Amazon shut down, or the government decide that Amazon should shut down your services. In fact, there was an outage in 23 last year, 4-hour outage on the Virginia data center that has blocked all the infrastructure, and it was just a major impact for all the company around the world, because most of the company were having their resources on Amazon. So you can see here a real dependency with 3 main actors that are mostly of US actors, that are more US actors. And obviously the CPU and the requirement for machine learning training is getting much more and more higher as we need to train more bigger models. So here it's not very clear, but in blue you can see the model, the traditional model, deep learning model that requires power, and in red the large-scale model, so what we see with GPT-3, GPT-4. So you can see an order of magnitude of 3 or 2 times higher than the blue. So we could do with some resources, with big GPUs, some blue classical machine learning training, but the red one is clearly not accessible by anybody. And in fact, you can realize that big companies are investing a lot in GPU. Just to give you an example, here you have the number of shipment of GPU, H100 GPU to the company. This is the top-end GPU from NVIDIA, and you can see Microsoft and Meta have got 150,000 GPU last year, and Mark Zuckerberg told us that he probably will reach 600,000 GPU end of 24. So 4 times what he did last year in 23. 4 times. And you can see Google is way far behind. So clearly nobody can keep up with this kind of investment. And more recently, Sam Altman has been, there are rumors that he was looking for investment of $7 trillion for a chip company. $7 trillion is 3 times Canada GDP. Okay, so nobody can do this. And why he does this? So this is probably maybe huge. This is clearly huge. This is way beyond what we can imagine. So maybe it's poker playing game, I don't know. But even if it's just half as this or even 10 times less than this, it's still very, very big. And why should he do this? Because his vision is AI should be in every pocket, just like your phone. So we need GPU for inference, for running models. So that would be his vision is he will sell his GPU to everybody. And also probably he wants to have the high-end model training. And for that, as we see, we need lots of power. With infinite power, you can probably modelize the universe. So maybe this is his vision, kind of dementia, kind of very evil genius vision, who knows, but that's maybe what he seek. So where will this lead? Maybe you are aware of what we call singularity. So singularity has been presented by a sci-fi. It's very funny because when we speak about AI, always sci-fi author came in front of the line. So here it's a mathematician and sci-fi author, and he wrote a book in the 80s. I recommend this one. It presents the concept of singularity. So the concept is when we have an intelligence that becomes quite efficient, it will be able to improve itself, and by improving itself, it just increases power exponentially until the end of humanity. So thank you, goodbye, see you next year. And in fact, but they have, the idea is, okay, this is the worst case scenario. On the other side, you could see superintelligence. Superintelligence is just improvement of a computer by itself. So a computer getting better is just a computer, so it remains a tool. So you can see that in both cases, you have something that is better than improving itself, but with or without risk. The thing is, the first mover, the first company that can reach this kind of breakthrough will have a very big advantage on the society. Because if you are, I don't know, OpenAI, and you have able to have this level of computing, of machine learning intelligence, you will be probably able to discover more things. That's the idea. And because of that, you will have a serious advantage on your concurrent. And everybody will be behind, and you might gain, because of exponential acceleration, you might just burn everybody on the line, if I could say it, crier tout le monde sur la ligne d'arrivée. Well, sorry for the French. And well, funnily, there have been some research, and so some people from the labs just used the agent, machine learning agent based on the large language model to simulate war escalation, a war crisis. And in every scenario, when you use this LLM, machine learning model, to just try to do the discussion between each other, all scenarios end up with escalation, and few of them end up with nuclear war. So thank you very much. So yes, we have risks. We have risk of surveillance because of the internet centralized. You can have surveillance of the masses, of everybody. Everybody knows that. But also for democracy, the control of information, the limitation of competition. Because if there is an actor taking power, taking all the resources, nobody will be able to keep up, and there will be no more innovation and concentration of power. So what can we do? So first, maybe we just have to wait, because generally the computer get cheaper. This is just an example. Here the CPU, the gigaflop are getting cheaper year after year. So okay, maybe one day some Altman or OpenAI will get this super intelligence. Or okay, we'll just have this advantage, but for maybe for 5 years, and then everybody will be able to have this computer power in his pocket, so who knows. Second, the power of the community. Sometimes there is a guy that is able to just change the face of the world. So here an example with Linus Torvald and Linux. You can see that in the 80s, the operating system market was dominated by his company, and then he came very humbly with Linux, and now we can see that Linux is in every pocket. I mean Android. And every server mostly. So yes, he did the job, but it's not just himself, it's the community. Linus himself won't have been able to do this. So with the power of the contribution of everybody, we can just do some marvelous things. And also, generally, the technical domination fade away. We had this very nice period in the 2000s where Internet Explorer was dominating the market, and without any innovation, and everybody was pissed up with that. We used to use jQuery and to have complete compatibility with Internet Explorer 6. And then guys from Mozilla just took Firefox, raised Firefox from the ashes. And we got this browser, and it just started to get more traction. And now today is more Chrome and WebKit that are in the mainstream, but we can see that Internet Explorer just an old story. Also, the crowd can give some resources. You guys probably maybe know this project, Sitting at Home or Folding at Home. And for example, Sitting at Home was able to have 5.2 million participants, and Folding at Home was able, during the pandemic, so it's a very special case, but it was a crisis case, to reach 2.4 exaflop in April 2020. 2.4 exaflop, so 1,000 giga is 1 tera, 1,000 tera is 1 peta, 1,000 peta is 1 exa. So you can see it's huge amounts of power. So it's possible. And it's for free, so people were not expecting anything from that. So sometimes, maybe the people or the crowd can do something. So how this could evolve in the future for the next decade? I'm going a little bit faster than I expected. So I'm doing a little pause. No, okay, I will continue. First, satellite. It's a good and bad news somehow. So satellites are just the market of the satellite is booming. You can see that the investment and the company in the last years have probably in 2027 get a huge spike. And there are lots of companies that are developing satellite launcher on one side, and you can see on the other side, for example, if you want to launch 20 kilos of a satellite of 20 kilos, SpaceX has an offer $300,000 for this. So it's not cheap, but it's not that expensive. So one can send satellites if you get some funding. It's possible. It's not a privilege of some big company anymore. And in fact, you can see that the number of satellites that have been launched in the last year are just exploded. So it's like everybody's sending satellites in the sky. So probably this is probably due to Starlink, but I think Starlink is not the only one here. So there are lots of satellites that have been sent in space. So bad news, because we know that it can leads to space pollution, but somehow good news if you want to have access to the internet by satellite. And it's not only Starlink, it's some project. For example, here you have a university project that has been testing the idea of sending a satellite, a geostationary satellite in space, providing 5G network to the ground. So they are using open source platform called Open Air Interface, and they are using technology for 5G communication from satellite. This is really impressive, because it means that anybody on Earth could just have access to the internet as soon as you have a geostationary satellite on top of your head. And okay, for us, it seems maybe unnecessary because we have a broadband connection and we don't fear the risk of being locked down by the government. But if you are in some country, that could open up some way to access to internet. And I can tell you that in Middle East, I remember when I was young, the satellite was forbidden where I used to live, and people were still having this satellite on the roof of their house to access to the TV network, to have access to information from outside, because the information was controlled by the government, and it was broadcasting usual good news about what government does. But you cannot have the opinion of everything else from outside, so people were listening for the channel from outside. So here it means that it's possible to have a satellite not controlled by, accessible and doable by community maybe, or some funding that is not so crazy. On the other hand, there are still some crowd-shared resource projects, such as Learning at Home or AI Horde. So it's the same principle as Folding and SETI at Home, but here it's for machine learning. The thing is, those kind of projects are not taking off, because nowadays it's difficult for people to share resources, especially GPU, because it costs electricity, and electricity costs a lot. So it might be not that obvious that people would really provide huge GPU power for free. So those things are more niche, and people are maybe testing, but the compute power from the crowd is not that it used to be as we got during the pandemic. So maybe another way would be what recently emerged, called decentralized physical infrastructure. So here, just as a disclaimer, I'm not a big fan of blockchain, but I still have to consider that this might be something. So the idea is you provide your resource. Maybe you are a company that has resources, and there is a marketplace with a token or coin or whatever, that where people can buy this resource. So it's not free, it's more a marketplace with resources that people provide. So people are small company, and on the other hand, people that need those resources can pass through this marketplace and this blockchain infrastructure. So nowadays it's a little bit fuzzy. There are many projects. It's not easy to really realize what would be the good one, etc. But still, this is the idea is interesting. So I'm not an expert, but I think this could be considered. Maybe we are at the maturity level of the blockchain hype. The famous slope. Who is that? So maybe that's something, because now it's not compute power for just cryptocurrency without anything tangible behind. Here you have a real physical stuff in exchange of money, so it's like really something. It's not just a cloud stuff where nobody knows where it goes. So you have many projects. You have compute projects, so people are providing compute power in exchange of money, storage, wireless. I've seen some Wi-Fi. You can provide your Wi-Fi, dash cam, anything that is physical on the world. So maybe this is something interesting. So I selected few projects and I just dig into it, and you have this project that are interesting. So here, for example, you have a Genesis or Vast AI providing machine learning task compute power. So with what they call proof of learning. So it's the idea of, instead of having proof of work, brute force proof of work, you just prove that you've done this learning stage of learning task. Something that is more around is Golem Tech, providing GPU, CPU power, and maybe storage for money. But I've checked the number of core available right now. It's like 4,000 core available. So it's okay-ish, but not that much. But the concept is quite the same. So those things are emerging. Maybe it will be the next thing, but so far we don't know. But this is the kind of alternative that it means that decentralize the concept of cloud computing and also services, because here I'm just talking about infrastructure, but also services can be provided like that. You also have storage in the same way, and you can see the storage, for example, in this blockchain CR is not that much. 1.5 petabytes is cool, but it's not that huge. So it's emerging. So all this concept of having this marketplace with distributed computer power around the world without centralized control is interesting. The thing is, so far I haven't seen something really community-driven, open source, etc. Maybe there are, but it's not maybe clear here. So it's mostly kind of fuzzy. Maybe one thing will emerge in the future. This is why, as a conclusion, and maybe for conclusion, I would say we know that there are many paths to the summit of the mountain, maybe, but we have to avoid taking always the same one. If we put all our eggs in the same bag, maybe it would be risky. Everybody knows that when you do investment. So maybe you should consider other way. And as a real conclusion, I would say this, I would quote this definition of intelligence, very interesting for your day-to-day life. Intelligence is a force that acts to maximize the future freedom of action. So the idea is if the real intelligence will always try to have the maximum of possibility in the long-term vision. So if you take only one path, if you put everything on one path, you will maximize the probability of failure and not survival. So think about this during ConFoo when you see all those technology, and think about this in your day-to-day life. It might change your life. Thank you very much. See you next time.